Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, and today I have Michaela Wade all the way over from England. She is one of the co-founders of the Family Law Assistant franchise, a growing band of new breed legal practitioners who help people represent themselves in the family courts using a mix of legal knowledge and coaching techniques. Her background as a master coach and hypnotherapist, as well being an NLP and hypnosis trainer, means she has all the tools to help clients manage their mindset and anxiety and put themselves in the best possible position to win their case in court. It's an honor to have you on, Michaela. How did you ever get into this?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I think I always used to say I fell into family law by accident, but I guess it's not really any kind of accident. When I was growing up, my family life was a little chaotic.
Mm-hmm.
And growing up in that chaos, I became the glue that binds, something that really I have today in the franchise. So dealing with a lot of emotions, dealing with a chaotic family background, learning how to smooth over the cracks,
Yeah.
appease the family. I think we all sort of play that role somewhere in our family, in our childhood. And
Mm-hmm.
I was definitely the peacemaker in the family. I was definitely the person that put things together. I was the negotiator, and I suppose very often probably the adult. I probably felt like the adult in that relationship. And I ended up finding myself in lots of very volatile, controversial roles. I certainly, when I left education, I thought I was going to become a musician. That's what I went and did and studied. But I ended up being a debt collector. I ended up being a benefits review officer. I ended up dealing with people who had special needs, who couldn't put a sentence together. I learnt special sign language. I learnt sign language to teach with the deaf. All of that was a great training ground until eventually I thought my career was going to be on litigation. I thought my career was going to be contract law specializing, and I qualified as a paralegal. And I thought my trajectory was going to be along a very corporate background. I've got a very corporate background. Until life happened, I'd married and subsequently found myself divorcing.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'd already was qualified, I was always smart and savvy enough to do the paperwork myself. But the one thing they never tell you in any of the family law books is the emotional cost. There was no
Mm-hmm.
one by my side telling me and preparing me for how I'd feel, how I'd physically feel, how I'd emotionally feel going through that process. At that time, it wasn't that long after really that I'd met Stephen, our co-founder of Family Law Assistance, and he was fighting to remain a part of his son's life. So all of that controversy, all of that negotiation skill sort of came to the fore when I helped Stephen close his case. And now, of course, he's got a great relationship with his son, and he sees him very, very regularly, plays a full and meaningful role in his life. But it got us thinking, because we had moved to the middle of nowhere to be a part of his son's life. And whilst that sounds incredibly romantic and noble, being stuck in the middle of nowhere with freezing cold temperatures, skint, poor, hungry, it's not quite so romantic.
Mm-hmm.
So we needed something to start and earn whilst we were literally in the middle of nowhere. Where we are, there's more sheep than people. It's fine if you want to become agriculture, but that was definitely not my bag. I'm probably the least practical person you're ever going to hope to meet. Don't ever give me flat pack, because I will mess it up. And I have zero sense of direction, so I was never going to become into that community. So we founded Family Law Assistance, and it started off with just helping people emotionally. Of course, I was already qualified legally to put together bundles and process and documents and know the strategy side of things, because I've been doing it for goodness knows how long by this point.
Right.
And then it just started. It felt like an overnight success. One moment I'm helping somebody putting together a statement. The next I'm at the High Court in the capital city here in England, helping somebody stop a child abduction. And from that point, family law assistance really was established, really was born. So here we are.
That's excellent. That's an excellent service because people need help, on an emotional level as well as a physical level. Because this takes a
Right.
toll on you physically, whether you realize it or not.
Right, absolutely. In fact, one of the things the majority of what I do is helping somebody
Mhm.
through a panic attack. Let me tell you, those
Mhm.
legal books that I've studied, they don't go into that. And family law, perhaps more than any other law,
Mhm.
is that more emotional. You're not going to get anything more emotive than somebody's family. This is somebody's life. And when you split with a partner or you have children, it seems crazy that the first go-to is an adversarial arena, such as
Mhm.
a court, in which to resolve matters. I mean, these are people that you once loved. These are people that you had not one but three children with.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden, you're in a sea of black, navy, and grey. People who are, it kind of sort of sounds like English. It sort of looks like English, but it definitely doesn't feel like English.
Mhm.
And so part of that anxiety, that stress, that physicalness, people feeling sick, people having panic attacks, part of that anxiety is being in a completely alien arena. And I think a lot of people in the legal profession tend to forget that. It's very easy to sort of put on a suit. I don't, by the way. I'm
Mhm.
very colourful, but
Uh-huh.
I don't put on a suit.
Mhm.
My guys don't like that. It puts them a little on edge. I can be authoritative without wearing 6-inch heels, which, by the way, I could never walk in.
Oh, me neither. No.
So I think it's understanding that people. This is more emotional. This is more human than I think anybody ever gives it credit for.
Mhm. Yeah, and the what people really don't even get was when you're upset and emotional over going into court, it is gonna affect your body even later in life.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we do, especially here at Family Law Assistance, is really celebrate the fact that the people that we're helping are the case. They know every intricate detail of their case. They know who, what, why, where, when, and how. A lot of people that go through family court often feel like it's something happening to them. And when
Mhm.
they feel like it's something happening to them, one automatically steps back. You've got that feeling of being on the back seat. It becomes a reactive approach as opposed to a proactive approach.
Mhm.
People's voice don't feel like they're being heard. If only they could hear what I'm saying. If
Mhm.
only I could say this, this, and this. Or the people they do have representing them, forgetting the most basic but most important details in their case.
Mhm.
So one of the things that we help people do is to have that voice in court. Sometimes it's not pretty, sometimes it's not articulate, eloquent, or erudite, but they get what they need to say over to the court
Mhm.
without that screen of a third party interpreting it for them. Most people can represent themselves, but what people need is that hand holding and the navigation through the court process. And I'm not just talking about the form filling and the strategizing and the case law, but more the emotional side of things as well. I often talk more about the emotional side of things because really and truly, actually, the law bit is the easy bit. Everyone's got Google these days. Everyone can get
Mhm.
a law book.
Mhm. Mhm.
People's rights and people's knowledge can easily be found out. It's that question of interpreting what, let's be real, what you see on Google, what you
Mhm.
read in a book, what you might see on an internet forum, and how is that applied to their case.
Mhm.
And often it's that beautiful melting pot of knowing the law, knowing the process, knowing the strategy, but then also combining it with a heck ton of hand holding
Mhm.
and navigating through that process. So they become, I know it sounds a bit woo, but they become more empowered. Fun fact, most people that represent themselves, first of all, never go back to being represented. No one likes to hand over that control once they've become so successful and doing what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, often go on to have blossoming and flourishing careers. Why? Well, hang on. They've managed to stand up to a judge and say what's what. They've managed to get their own successes. They apply those lessons learned into I'm going to call it the real world, because we all know that the rules that we play with in court are not the same rules that we play with in real life. I often liken court to a game of chess.
Mm-hmm.
Chess or cards? I'm a chess girl myself.
Me too.
That case of, oh, excellent,
Yeah.
excellent. It's like they move,
Yeah.
you move, they move,
Mm-hmm.
you move, and you're never going to win you're never going to win a case in one move.
Mm-mm. No, that's just it. It's a balance of continuances and then motions and then another continuance, because they like to drag things out.
Right. I love how you've picked up on that, because when I'm talking to people, I don't know, I think Hollywood's got a lot to answer for. The reality of being in family court is
Mm-hmm.
sitting for hours on end in a really bad, stuffy waiting room, drinking really awful coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of what managing people's expectations. So I always think tip number one, your idea of fast, trust me, is not the court's idea of fast.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here in the UK, a lot of courts was government run, so anything that's usually government run tends to be a bit slow, tends to be a bit clunky. So people expect things to be over just like that, and that's rarely the case.
Mm.
It's a procedure, it's a process, and I think people having to understand it's a process. Just like when one applies for one's driving license or anything else that you might need from the government.
And it's a long process. You think that justice is going to be done and the judge is going to get it and get your story and really understand and get that you're dealing with a personality disorder and figure it out. And he's not. He doesn't care.
No. And I think that is so important. A couple of things. First of all, people expect to just rock up to court, and I hear this a lot. I simply have just got to tell the judge everything. He'll get it, and we can be on our way.
Mm-hmm.
And it never is that simple, because guess what? If there's one thing the court does like, it's a lot of reports, it's a lot of paperwork, and it's a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, secondly, one of the most important things that I've learned, and what I tell my clients, is these are your children. These are not the judge's children. These are not the professional's children. This is not the social worker's children. They are your children. And I think when you're kind of putting your trust, your life into somebody else's hands, it's very easy to forget why we're there in court. So much so, actually, that I'll always get my guys to take either a picture of their children into court with them and just have it on the table.
Mm-hmm.
And that's nothing about submitting evidence or in a statement. But you know what? There's a lot that can be drawn from that. First of all, it gives the judge an indication of, hang on, these are actual lives that I'm deciding upon here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a powerful message in the room. Now, if my guys can't, and they struggle, it's too emotional, then I'll always get them to at least have a favourite toy. I was in court 2 weeks ago, and my guy, he brought his child's favourite squish toy. And before we got into the courtroom, he told me all about the adventures of this squish toy that his child had with them. But tell you what, that first of all got his anxiety from 5th gear down to 1st gear. But it also meant that he was child focused, because we all know when we're in that arena, it's I.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas there's a powerful argument to begin sentences with your children's name, so that at least you come across as child focused.
Mm-hmm.
That's strategy stuff that you don't find that in a law book.
Mm-hmm.
That's practical help that can actually, a lot's focused on demeanour, especially in a family court.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very, very powerful.
Mm-hmm. Like in our court system, they just want you to say their initials like
Right.
JN, I'm referring to RK. Yeah, it's like, I don't know. That's what kind of we're doing over here.
I don't, and I have to say, I think it doesn't matter really where we are on the planet,
Hmm.
whether you're referring to. I have been, by the way, it's slightly different here in the UK, um, but then it not so much really. Very often people are referred by the applicant or the respondent. Well, hang on a minute.
Hmm.
They were John and Jane. They met, fell in love. They had 3 children. They were
Right.
never once in their relationship as the applicant and the respondent.
Hmm.
In your system, kids were never just initials. So I think it's about sort of bringing that to life, which
Hmm.
people who represent themselves kind of get away with doing,
Hmm.
much more so because they are the case.
Hmm. Hmm. And they know their case better than anyone. And I'm sure when they meet you, then they've got to tell you the whole story so you know what's going on so you can help them better.
Right, absolutely. So part of it's funny, listening to people's stories. It's probably one of the things that puts a fire in my belly
Hmm.
because I meet people from all walks of life, and just knowing how they got to be in that position, I find personally fascinating, and I
Hmm.
can sort of take all of that because listen, they may know their case, but very often they probably can't see the wood for the trees.
Hmm.
They feel that the judge needs to know everything. They needs
Hmm.
to know war and peace now, all of it now. So
Hmm.
having to kind of select the bits, I often liken it to a movie.
Hmm.
Very often you don't want to sit down and watch the entire movie,
Hmm.
but you would want to know the trailer. And actually, the trailer, a well put together trailer, is very, very successful.
Hmm. And it seems like these judges want very few details. I don't know if you're seeing that a lot.
Yeah, which hence my reason actually. So a couple of things I'll always say to clients. Actually, probably my top tip, okay, for anybody going through family court right now. Are you waiting for it? Shut up. Seriously, shut up.
Right, right, yes.
And whether that's online, on social media, whether
Mhm.
it's in the courtroom, here's why. You might feel that the judge needs to know everything, but actually you're making the judge's life harder. You've got to rewind and talk in almost need to know basis,
Mhm.
bullet points. And as if you were creating a shopping list, you would have the necessities, your loo roll at the top, and the nice to haves or the nice to knows more at the bottom. Your chocolate and wine,
Yeah,
depending on your priorities,
yeah,
perhaps
right.
should go at the bottom of that list.
Mhm.
And it's the same for when people are in court. You're right. Judges, courts are overrun, understaffed, underpaid, probably, and they don't have the time. They don't care. They don't care. One case to the next. You're in. You're out. Boom. Next. It's a production line.
Mhm.
So you need to stand out. And there's a whole heap of stuff that people can actually do to help themselves. So being quiet, shutting up, being selective in what you say is super important.
Mhm.
And I have to say, anybody going through court will know that the magic doesn't actually happen in the courtroom. The magic happens behind the scenes, which is not quite so sexy. I get it.
Mhm. Mhm.
But it is. It's in the planning. It's in the preparation. It's in the you're lining your ducks up ready. It's in all of that. It's in preparing for what you say. I would say that 90% of the work that goes into a court hearing is behind the scenes. It's like that iceberg. Most
Mhm.
of what happens in preparing for a court case goes underneath the iceberg. What we see, the courtroom, is the tip of the iceberg. And to some greater or lesser degree, that's that 5 or 10% when you are in the lap of the gods.
Mhm. And when you have been in court with people, have you had some really bad judges just completely disrespect uh, your clients?
Yeah, sadly so. Judges are like anybody; they're human. And I'll never forget one particular case. I walked in, it was a Friday afternoon. It was about 3:30 in the afternoon. And I know judges, especially here in the UK, if you're in front of a judge by about 4 o'clock, they want out.
Hmm.
So it was about 3:30. Cases had significantly overrun it. I don't know what it's like over where you are, but if they book you in for 10 o'clock, if you're out before 5, you're doing well.
Hmm. Hmm.
So we were there at 3:30, and as I walked in, and bearing in mind, we'd been sat there, and my guy had been pretty much percolating all day at this
Oh
point. We get in
no.
at 3:30, he's got his script, he's been over and over and over what he's supposed to say, he's in the mindset, but he's gone past that now because it's 3:30 and it's a Friday afternoon.
Hmm.
And we walk into the courtroom, and the judge is there with his feet cocked up on the table, his hands behind his head, and the first thing that he says to us is, I need a gin and tonic.
Oh, oh my gosh.
And and
Whoa.
my guy, well, he loses colour in his face, and I'm sort of propping him up, and I simply say to him, we are just going to have to play dead on this one.
Hmm. Hmm.
There was no way on earth that this judge was going to do anything. It was 3:30, 4 o'clock, he was out of there. And guess what? I think that's a powerful lesson learned when anyone going through family court, because sometimes you're ahead, sometimes you're behind, and sometimes you don't move anywhere.
Hmm.
So after that particular case, and I say that because my black sense of humour thought how bizarre and how funny. Secondly, judges are human, but you're absolutely right. It was absolutely ridiculous and unprofessional when you've
Hmm.
got somebody walking through the court who's fighting to be a part of their child's life for whatever reason, and that's the attitude
Hmm.
after waiting all day. So, yeah.
That's sad. That really is sad.
Yeah, yeah. But then it's funny because after that experience, he did actually go on to completely win his case because
Mm.
I don't know. I think for him that must have been a turning point. To be honest, it was a turning point in my career because I'd never come across anything quite so blatant.
Mhm.
I've seen judges nod off during
Mhm.
submissions. I have seen uh, people sneaking food in. I've seen all kinds of really bizarre stuff, but nothing quite so blatant as that before.
Yeah, I have seen judges nod off myself. I'm thinking, wow, the taxpayer's paying you all this money.
Right?
It's nap time.
I'm sorry. Am I disturbing you? For a moment
Right,
there, I thought I was in a courtroom.
right, exactly. Oh, these poor people that go through family court. And I know in England, they don't have juries over there either.
Hmm. That's right, because it's
Yeah, how,
private. Yeah.
and how do you feel? I mean, do you think there should be a jury?
So I'm one of those people that I can see both sides of that story.
Hmm.
I think it would be good to have court hearings public,
Hmm.
so in the UK, because I think some very prominent issues could be easily raised to the surface. And one serious issue that springs to mind is parental alienation.
Hmm.
Um, I think if people could really see what was going on, I think a lot more would be done a lot quicker. However, I also see the flip side to that, in that it's not like criminal court. Criminal court tends to be a lot more black and white, mainly because the burden of proof is that much higher. So here in the UK, in criminal court, we have to prove something beyond a reasonable doubt in criminal court, which means you've got to be pretty darn sure that they've done it.
Hmm.
But we know family court's not like that. Families are not like that. The burden of proof in our family court is that based on a balance of probabilities. I know, it's not quite so catchy. And it's very woolly, and it kind of come across as very grey. But I think that reflects, sadly, the nature of family law. If we think about some serious issues such as domestic abuse, there's a whole spectrum to sort of more subtle domestic abuse incidents like gaslighting,
Hmm.
all the way through from that gaslighting and perhaps that's so coercive behaviour,
Hmm.
right through to something much more sinister, that is absolutely a criminal offence. But I think, sadly, it's the nature of family law. So I sit into two camps. I see an argument for both sides. Yeah.
Well, I know to run a jury over here is expensive, and I don't know if a parent would want to take on that expense.
Yeah, that's a very important point. My cynical side always
Mhm.
says, follow the money.
Right, right. Yeah, I'm cynical. I totally understand. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I feel at least why not put video cameras and tamper-proof mics into these courtrooms?
Right. Yeah, right.
That way, you can. I mean, if people saw how these judges behave, they might see. I don't think you don't vote your judges in, do you?
No, that we don't.
Mm-mm.
So you do.
Right. Well, some states do, some states don't.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. It's a whole can of worms, really, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, we have something slightly different. So we either have a judge or we have magistrates. And
Mhm.
magistrates are three lay people
Mhm.
who are making these decisions. And don't get me wrong, they're sort of assisted by a legal advisor, but you walk in and go, well, could you perhaps not know the law? It'd be
Right.
useful if you did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and fun fact, 60% of all cases here in the UK are heard in front of magistrates. And uh, yeah, one could get very robust magistrates,
Mhm.
but often, sadly, tends to elongate and augment proceedings
Mhm.
in an already protracted, uh, frustrating. And don't get me wrong, they've tried to bring down the amount of time. In fact, they'd had tried to bring it down so that an average case in family court, in private proceedings anyway, was down to 18 months. But well, that's not much consolation. And I always seem to be coming across blasé. I said, well, it's only 18 months. 18 months in that journey is a heck
Mhm.
of a long time.
Mhm.
And the other thing as well is that although one would have, hopefully, a final order after the end of that 18 months, guess what? It's usually not suitable for a child up until they're 16 or 18. So guess what? More applications are being made. It's same, different packaging.
Mhm.
So I don't know I genuinely don't know what the answer is, to be fair. And I think part of the nature of that is the nature of families. What I do say is this, though. I do think there should be a lot more education out there
Mhm.
for serious issues. I know lots of people, and good luck to them, have been campaigning strenuously to have big issues such as parental alienation and more issues surrounding domestic abuse. Perhaps another controversial one, male victims of domestic abuse.
Mhm.
That those stronger issues to be brought much more to light.
Oh, yeah, definitely. There's so many entanglements in these court cases
Yeah.
that the judge has to look at these multifaceted cases, and I think that's when their eyes glaze over.
Right, and I got to say, it's that feeling of overwhelm. So for
Mhm.
anybody, and heck, my heart, my passion lies with the people that are going to court. That's who I'm here for, because it's tough.
Mhm.
So I'd say the next top tip would be to make sure you've got your support system around you. And what do I mean by that? Well, spoiler alert: friends
Mhm.
and family may not be the best people in your corner. The
Mhm.
amount of times that I've sort of rocked up to court with my guy with their posse of people, and I've been the one to kick him out because it's emotional. So Granny's got an opinion, and she's
Mhm.
not afraid to voice that opinion.
Mhm.
You know, the best mate says what you want to do is dot dot dot.
Mhm.
It doesn't help.
Right.
And I also think that the friends and family, anybody going through will family court, will deal with this in a very their own way, because it's kind of like a living grief.
Mhm.
Whatever issue you're dealing with, it's kind of like a living grief. So some people may overshare to their friends and family,
Mhm.
and the friends are like, "Oh God, they're at
Mhm.
this bit again." Yeah,
Oh.
the story when she left and she cleared the house. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, he'll talk about the rocking chair now that was left. Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
about now. So, from the friends and family's point of view, they feel frustrated, they feel helpless because they don't know what to say. They don't know what to say to help the situation, and they'll have their own version of it themselves. They'll have their own model of the world. They'll have their own opinions,
Mm-hmm.
and I think can't really comment really unless you've walked a mile in somebody else's shoes. So they may not understand what people going through family court are going through actually. So when I say a support network, I first of all think get yourself into a support group, get yourself into like-minded people who are going through the divorce, people who are going through child issues, people who are going through non-molestation issues or abuse issues. That was my first tip. And then I'd also say get yourself the right legal support, whether it's somebody like me, whether it's whomever you've got in your legal corner, make sure they're the right person, because in court, you guys are a team in court.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got to feel like you're a team. Now, don't get me wrong. There are times when I've got to say things to people they don't necessarily like, but they need to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
In court, we are absolutely a team, and they need to feel a team.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, get yourself a good therapist, because I guarantee you, whatever issues you're going through, and I speak as somebody myself who I'm an NLP coach, I'm a master trainer, a master coach and hypnotherapist. I understand more than anybody, I guess, that when people get divorced or when people go through child issues, you're looking at past historical issues. And actually, some of these issues perpetrate through generations. When I was dealing much more with public law cases where there's local authority involvement and children are being adopted or into foster care, what you'd find is 3 generations of families. You'd have the grandparents, then you'd have the parents, and then, of course, you'd have the children. And what you'd find, actually, is the issues have literally perpetrated through generations. So when Joe Blogg's average is just going through a divorce and he's just separated from his wife or their husband or whomever, there are unresolved issues. It always takes 2 to have a relationship breakdown. Always. Whether somebody's not respecting their own boundaries, or whether somebody's self-worth isn't decent enough or where it should be, whatever those issues might be. And of course, we're also dealing with we're dealing with the kaleidoscope of emotions, anger, sadness, fear, hurt and guilt, which I guarantee you there's not been resolved from issues back in your childhood, whether it's mummy or daddy issues, it doesn't matter. But trust me, they all seem to come to the front at the point of being in family court. I often think that family court is not just about family court, it's the dam breaks, I think, when people go to family court. So get yourself a good therapist. Be mindful of people, of friends and family. Know that they love you, know that they support you, know that they come at you with nothing but love, but bearing in mind that they're not walking through your shoes. So have your team around. And my other top tip, I would say, for anybody going through family court, and I say this actually, whether people are represented, whether they are unrepresented, be organised. I've come across so many people. I remember speaking to somebody and I said, so where's your court order? And she said to me, yeah, about that, it's in my bread bin. I said, your bread bin? Yeah. And then I was doing a virtual call with her, and she literally opened up a bread bin, and this avalanche of paperwork fell out from a bread bin. I kid you not. And of course it was all dog-eared, it was coffee stained, it was partially ripped. So my biggest thing is be organised. Get yourself a lever archer folder, get yourself a decent printer scanner, get yourself some decent pens that work, put everything into chronological order, screenshot everything. Because there's not just a practical element of being organised, whether you're representing yourself and you need to put paperwork through to court, or actually if you're represented because you've done the work for your legal brief and therefore saving you a few extra bucks, bingo. But from a mental point of view, you're in control. If you feel that your life is in some kind of order, guess what? You act like it as well.
Well, when I was in court, the judge was asking for a certain visitation order. So he says, counsel, do you have this order? And both opposing and mine did not have this order. So I piped up and said, Your Honor, I have the order in my purse. Would you like to see it? So the bailiff handed me my purse and I pulled it out. Here it is. So he got to look at it. because it wasn't being followed. But yet, all he did was give a slap on the wrist to the opposing side for not following the visitation order.
Right, and I guess that brings me nicely to a next point. People often think, is the court order worth the paper it's written on?
Mm-hmm.
Get that a lot, and I think especially in family court. I don't know what it's like in the US, although I do get a hint of what what it's like. But trust me, I guarantee it's not that different from the UK. When some party breaks the court order and they're going back to court to enforce their order, and they get nothing but a slapped wrist, understandably, my guy's saying to me, well, hang on a minute, aren't we like in court? Why do court never enforce their own orders? And I always think it's about picture building. It's never the final product. Court orders can be breached. They are breached. It's a bit like the burglar system that one puts on their house. You could have a great big fancy schmancy burglar alarm that you put on your house. If someone's going to burgle your house, they don't give a rat's behind what fancy schmancy burglar system you've got on the outside of it. They're going to do what they're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
There was more, I think, of a deterrent. I would also say, especially in family court, that I don't think it's ever over. I mean, how many parenting books do you see? How to parent children via a court order? How to parent a child via text? How to parent a child via a communication book? That's right, there isn't any, because it sounds insane. Mm-hmm. Because it is insane. And yet there's millions, billions of people who are parenting their child with a court order. There are people who have got their financials with just a court order. Mm-hmm. So I'm not always sure that it's ever over. So another top tip is learn to live your life alongside the court process. And what do I mean by that? I often liken it to the weather. Now, I know that you've spent some time here in the UK, so you know it rains a lot. Yeah. If there's one thing about the UK that's as sure as eggs is eggs, which is a very British phrase,
mm-hmm.
It rains a lot. So we put our umbrella up when it rains. Mm-hmm. You're still going to go about and do your everyday business. You're still going to go to the shops. You're still going to do the go to the grocery store, your laundry. But you put the umbrella up, and soon enough, eventually, although some people might want to correct me on this, but eventually the sky clears and the rain stops. I'm actually from Wales, so it rains perhaps more than average here.
Oh,
but yeah.
Yes. Well, see, when I was going through this, it's my current husband was working out of town. Lucky him. Okay, he was really lucky, and this is probably how our marriage survived, because he was working out of town, pulling in more money to cover the loss of my job. But we would only talk about court, like what happened, for about 10 minutes. And then we talk about his day, talk about something else, because we're not going to sit here and dwell on what happened and how I got screwed again in the courtroom.
Right. I think that, Marianne, I think that's absolutely healthy, because I think you need to have some boundaries around this, because you know as well as anybody else, it can feel all consuming. If you let it, it becomes the only thing that happens in your life. And actually, there's still many other stuff that's going on. So I'll always tell people to look after themselves, whether they take up Tai Chi. I had somebody that every time they came to court, they would go Thai boxing. Goodness knows how they made it. I've no idea, because it sounds pretty rough. But they would do Thai boxing the day before. And so by the time they came to the court hearing, they were calm. Anybody that's going through court, another top tip is to make sure you look after yourself. Eat right, exercise, even if you feel like you're going through the motions. But it really is important. Your children need you to be on your game. They need you to be your best. And sometimes people miss the basics. I know some people who have turned to abusing drugs and alcohol just to kind of get some release, feel good about themselves. So to make sure that you look after yourself, get enough sleep, exercise, eat right. It sounds obvious and it sounds basic, but you know as well as I do, that's often something that's very missing when you're going through divorce and it feels all overpowering, overwhelming, all too consuming. So yeah, I think, and having healthy boundaries about when you discuss it, especially if you're in a relationship. I mean, when I deal with people who are in a family or in a relationship, I often work with both of them, because both of them are going through this. It's not just one person, it's the other party as well.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
the husband or the wife that's the partner or the step parent, it's going to be affecting them too. And they're often the driving force behind what's going on as well. In your case, your husband was kind of earning a few extra bucks to kind of be the support behind you.
Hmm.
Often when I'm helping a guy, sometimes it's the wife that is she's the glue that binds. She's the person that's driving us forward. She's the person that's saying, look, darling, don't worry, it'll be fine, I've got you. So it's important for me and my team that we're working with the family or the couple, because it affects both people.
Hmm. Yeah, and the other spouse may feel helpless, like there's nothing I can do, but I'm just, I'm over here and you're over there. Just you just have to be a listening ear.
Right, and and I speak from personal experience here as well, because I was that spouse. I was the step parent. I'd met Stephen, the co-founder of Family Law Assistance, and I know at the beginning, I realised I was marrying him, but I hadn't counted and figured out that I was also kind of marrying the ex as well. I knew that I'd accepted my husband and his son, and in fact, me and my stepson have got the most incredible. I am super blessed to
Hmm.
have such an incredible relationship with my stepson. But I think people see that now, but what they didn't see was
Hmm.
how much patience, love, sometimes a lot of wine, just to
Right.
just to get through it. Because I mean, goodness me, in the beginning days when there was a court fight going on, there was a lot. There was the ex, there was a court fight, there's a
Hmm.
child that I've got to get to know. So
Hmm.
having some healthy boundaries, and heck, I think an expert is somebody that's made all the mistakes, right?
Hmm.
I have made all of those mistakes. I at the beginning, I definitely drank too much. I thought the number of times I ditched my husband because it was just too much. The number of times I sort of walked away and thought, oh, I can't be dealing with this. The number of times I walked away and thinking, goodness me, is there not an easier way to do it?
Hmm.
But I kept going back and being that support. And then for me, as the spouse, as the stepmother, being dropped into step parenting, just left to get on with it. I've been there, so I have a particular love and a particular sympathy for step parents. Because it's tough. I think women, there's a whole thing of where I remember going to the school gates and kind of being looked down upon, and then
Hmm.
of course my black sense of humour thought maybe I'm just better off wandering into the school playground with a big oversized t-shirt that says the upgrade on it. I don't know.
Right.
So it was all of those emotions and head stuff that I went through. So I understand, particularly when it comes to other spouses, but I also know this, that where we are now, despite the mistakes, I stuck with it,
Hmm.
because now that my stepson and me have an amazing relationship,
Hmm.
and that took a lot of love and patience, and work, a commitment. I made a
Hmm.
pact with my husband. I said, I make a pact that I will make an effort and get to know and have a relationship with your son. But he also has to make a pact with me that he kind of understands that what I'm going through is hella tough right now.
Hmm.
And that pact, and those boundaries have seen us through, and it's seen us right. So more than ever, I think I am particularly invested in working with families, working with couples, because I know the knock-on effect. I know how it's been being the other woman, but you're kind of persona non gratis. You're nobody there. You're nobody really, and yet you have to treat the child like it's your own. But you're walking this tightrope of what, and then there's no rule books, by the way, that comes with being a step parent. So
Hmm.
yeah, I really have lived, walked, and breathed it in every which way.
Hmm. The thing that I had noticed, at least, well, in my case, was my kids really, really liked their stepfather, who I married. And I think that caused a lot of jealousy over there. And that just compounded things.
Yeah, absolutely. It was slightly different. So I've always had respect for my stepson's mother.
Mhm,
Um, I remember earlier on, certainly in my case, in our case, she tried to sort of get me involved in all this proceedings, would rather
mhm,
parent my stepson with me. But I think that for me there was a line,
mhm,
and I'm sure it was ignited by some jealousy as
mhm,
well. You know what?
mhm,
I always think it's almost like if you could subtitle
mhm,
what was going on. I remember doing handovers and the unspoken things. On the surface it was, hi, how are you? I love your top. Don't you look great? Oh
mhm.
gosh, little Johnny's doing this little artwork and everything. And then where the handovers were was in a car park. I could almost hear this sort of Ennio Morricone soundtrack as this kind of Mexican standoff. And if you were to subtitle what was going on, what was really going on, I always think would make quite a comical scene. But you're right. I
Mhm,
think there's a whole heap of and both sides. I have to say, both sides.
mhm,
Um, Certainly from my point of view, I totally understood the whole jealousy. Oh my gosh, my husband had met a woman and has had a child with them, and at that time, oh, not wanting that with me, and so I do see that kaleidoscope and issues
mhm,
of everybody.
mhm,
Um, I think when you put the child in the center of that, and you realize, hang on a minute, it's not about me. And that's
mhm,
what helped me. It's not about me. It's
mhm,
about this little boy here that needs to have a relationship, a meaningful
mhm,
relationship with both sides. So whatever issues I had, and I've certainly had them. I remember getting outside the car, and practicing. How ridiculous is this? But practicing the walk over to the car to pick up my stepson that says, I'm fine, I'm good, I've got this, I'm calm, I'm confident, I'm me.
mhm, mhm.
And it just seems so ridiculous now. But yeah, we've all been through it, and so yeah, putting aside all those feelings and those issues, it's easier said than done.
Mhm. It is. It is. Have you ever had a parent come up to you and say, "I just need to be hypnotized. I need to forget all this ever happened and
Yes.
just forget it and move
Right.
on?"
Right. So one of the things I actually do as a sideline, being a hypnotherapist, is to calm that mind, is to
Mm,
calm that inner voice. I remember once, in fact, it's when I was just qualifying, and I remember having somebody who had she came out in an anaphylactic shock. It's a bit extreme, but she had a phobia. It was nothing short of a phobia,
mm,
and she wanted to put another application in to court. And I said, listen, love, that's not going to work, because
mhm,
the minute you see him, you're going to go into an anaphylactic shock, and then we've got the ambulances. It's just not going to work. I mean, you're going to rock up to court, go Nino, Nino. How is that even going to work?
mhm,
So right then, we did some hypnotherapy. I removed a phobia.
mhm,
Then she was calm. So it's more about people sort of say wanting to forget, but actually what they need is how to cope. They don't want to forget. They
mhm,
don't want to forget
mhm,
their children. They don't want to forget. They may want to forget the horrible stuff, but most people just want to move forward. Actually, they want it fixed.
mhm,
They just
mhm.
want it.
I'm here. I'm here. Can you hear me? There you are.
There I am.
Wow. I can't believe it did that.
That's all right.
Yeah, so oh my goodness, because it's like, wow, I can't believe it's doing because it was doing beautifully up until then.
I know.
It better not have lost this first part. I don't think it did, but, I didn't touch any buttons because I was just waiting for you to come back on.
Yeah, I don't. I think we're fine. I think we're fine.
Okay. So, okay, you were saying that they want it fixed. I
They
think
just
that's
want
how.
it fixed. People
Mhm,
just want it fixed. But I remember that I've spent a few intense days coaching somebody who had their children taken off them with a different mindset, totally changed, and they
mhm,
got their kids back. So a lot of the people don't understand or underestimate actually how much mindset. A lot of people say, well, the professionals are this, the judges are this, blah blah blah, and that might or might not be true. But I tell you what, there's quite a lot that can be said for somebody's mindset, and that can be changed. That can be managed. Actually, you can achieve the result that you want.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd like to have you back on. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, just that we're going global.
Mhm. Oh,
So I
good.
think, yeah. So a lot of people. I mean, where you are in the States, a lot of people represent themselves. I'm not sure they have exactly the same version of what we do here in the
Mhm.
UK. But I tell you what, workshops may very well be winging its way over to the States. I'm certainly am in the process of sorting out some workshops. So for help people who represent themselves or people going through court, I mean, it's the lessons that we have to help people get through that are really powerful, and they have no boundaries. We don't, the international boundaries, it doesn't matter what the issues that people go through. It doesn't matter whether you're in the UK, Australia, the States, it doesn't matter. So watch out for that.
Okay. How can people reach you if they would like to talk to you?
Sure. So my website is www.familylawAssistance.co.uk. And if you just Google Michaela Wade, Family Law Assistance, I'm absolutely everywhere.
Oh, good, good.
I'm everywhere.
Yeah,
In,
you better
if
be.
I certainly am. So Instagram, Twitter, Facebook,
Oh,
YouTube. We've
good.
got a YouTube channel as well, and you can hear me chatting to people who work with us. You'll hear us chatting to our team. I'm regularly on live. I've got my settings set to public. Seriously, I'm absolutely everywhere. So anybody that needs help, whether it be a mindset or just helping going through court, then feel free to hoot and holler at me.
That's excellent. Thank you, Michaela. I'll be looking forward to having you back on.
I'm more than happy to come back on.
Oh, good. Okay, don't jump off. Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us again with Michaela and other exciting guests. So I thank you again, Michaela. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.